Welcome to episode 3 of 10-Minute Enigmas. Today we touch on gangsters, greed, and conspiracies behind the slayings of two 90s music icons, Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls. It was 1994. The hip-hop world was on fire, its pulse strong with the beats and rhymes of two of its brightest stars, Tupac Shakur and the Notorious B.I.G, also known as Biggie Smalls. They were legends in the making, each with their own style, their own world, and yet their paths were about to collide in ways that would forever shape the history of rap. Tupac was on the West Coast, a fiery, outspoken poet who spoke for the oppressed. He had already dropped iconic albums like Tupacalypse Now and Strictly for My Niggas. His music was political, raw, and introspective, touching on issues like police brutality, poverty, and the struggles of Black America. But Tupac was also known for his volatility, his willingness to speak his mind, and to get into conflict. His personal life, filled with run-ins with the law and controversy, reflected the duality of his character. An artist of great compassion, but also a man who struggled with his own demons. Biggie, on the other hand, was the East Coast's crown jewel. Christopher Wallace, also known as Biggie Smalls, had just released Ready to Die, an album that was slick, smooth, and often a stark contrast to the raw intensity of Tupac. With his deep voice and calm demeanor, Biggie painted vivid pictures of street life and the hustle for money and respect. But beneath that facade of the smooth, charismatic figure, there was the same hunger and ambition to make it out of the rough world of Brooklyn that Tupac embodied on the West Coast. In the mid-90s, the East Coast-West Coast rivalry was heating up. Tupac had already been embroiled in a public feud with figures like Dre and Snoop, but things started to take a more personal turn on one fateful night in November 1994, when Tupac was shot multiple times in the lobby of Quad Recording Studios in Manhattan. The incident left him severely wounded and sparked a firestorm of speculation about who was behind the attack. The world was waking up to the dangerous and violent undertones of the global hip-hop phenomenon. Though many thought the shooting was the work of West Coast rivals, including Death Row Records boss Suge Knight, Tupac initially pointed the finger at Biggie and his label, Bad Boy Records. In his pain and anger, he felt betrayed by those he thought were his friends. He went on air, openly accusing Biggie, his Bad Boy Records, and Sean Puffy Combs of having prior knowledge of the shooting, which they vehemently denied. But the damage was done. A deadly rift formed between two of the biggest names in rap, with other artists, fans, and music industry professionals watching on and forced to take sides. Tupac's response to the shooting was to come out even stronger, using his anger and bitterness as fuel for his music. His album Me Against the World was a reflection of his inner turmoil, but it also cemented his position as one of the greatest storytellers in the game. He had no shortage of enemies, but also fans who saw him as a voice of truth and defiance. Meanwhile, Biggie continued to rise with his second album, Life After Death, on the horizon. He was selling millions of records, enjoying the lavish lifestyle that came with his success. But in his heart, he was frustrated by the drama that was now a part of his life. The tension between the coasts, the beefs, the media frenzy, it was all exhausting. By 1996, Tupac had signed with Death Row Records, under the mentorship of Suge Knight. The Death Row camp was famously known for its hard stance against Bad Boy, and Tupac's public attacks on Biggie escalated. In a tragic twist, on September 13, 1996, Tupac was gunned down in Las Vegas after a Mike Tyson fight, at the age of just 25. Tupac was in a car with Death Row Records CEO Suge Knight when a white Cadillac pulled up beside them at a red light on the Las Vegas Strip. The shooter fired several rounds, hitting Tupac multiple times. He died 6 days later in the hospital. The loss was monumental. His death shocked the world, leaving an entire generation mourning. So who was responsible for the cold-blooded slaying of one of the world's most eloquent voices of music rebellion? Theory 1 is the East Coast-West Coast rivalry. Tupac's feud with the Notorious B.I.G and the broader East-West Coast rivalry has often been linked to his murder. Some have speculated that the shooting was an act of retaliation for Tupac's diss tracks and public accusations against Biggie and his camp. However, there was no conclusive evidence linking Biggie or anyone from Bad Boy Records to Tupac's killing. Theory 2 stems from the dispute with Death Row and Suge Knight. Some believe that Suge Knight or others from the Death Row camp may have been involved. The shooting could have been an inside job, stemming from a conflict within Death Row Records or over business disputes. Suge Knight himself was present in the car with Tupac during the shooting, but he was unharmed, leading to further speculation about whether the shooting was orchestrated for some strategic reason. A third theory speculates that the shooting was the work of the South Side Crips, a Los Angeles street gang. Tupac had been involved in an altercation with a member of the Crips, Orlando Anderson, a few months before the shooting, and some believe this was the trigger for his murder. Anderson was questioned by police but never charged, and he died in a 1998 gang-related shooting. Fourthly, an LAPD conspiracy theory suggests that the Los Angeles Police Department was involved in Tupac's death, possibly due to Tupac's political activism and the influence he had in the African American community. It was implied that the police might have had a vested interest in silencing him. However, there is no strong evidence to support this claim. Then, another bombshell rocked the music world. The following year, on March 9, 1997, Biggie was shot and killed in Los Angeles at the age of 24, just 6 months after Tupac. He was leaving a party at the Peterson Automotive Museum when a car pulled up alongside his vehicle at a red light, and the driver opened fire, hitting Biggie multiple times. Despite being rushed to the hospital, Biggie was pronounced dead shortly afterward. His murder, much like Tupac's, remains unsolved, and the conspiracy theories surrounding the deaths of both rappers continue to this day. So, who murdered the Notorious B.I.G? The most widely speculated motive is the ongoing East Coast-West Coast hip-hop rivalry, particularly the conflict between Bad Boy Records, which Biggie was associated with, and Death Row Records, which Tupac Shakur was signed to. After Tupac's murder in 1996, many believed that Biggie was targeted in retaliation, even though Biggie himself denied any involvement in Tupac's death. This theory hinges on the belief that Tupac's murder was part of a larger feud between the two coasts, which then escalated into Biggie's death. Theory 2 suggests that Suge Knight, the head of Death Row Records, may have had a hand in Biggie's murder. Whispers ran that Knight orchestrated the killing in revenge for Tupac's death, since Biggie was seen as a symbol of the East Coast's dominance in the rap game. Especially considering that Death Row had long been in a public feud with Bad Boy Records. However, there is no direct evidence to support the claim that Suge Knight ordered Biggie's killing, and Knight himself has always denied any involvement. Theory 3. In recent years, one of the more persistent theories has been that corrupt elements within the Los Angeles Police Department were involved in Biggie's murder. A former LAPD detective, Russell Poole, claimed in a 2006 investigation that certain officers within the LAPD had ties to gangs, and one of those officers, Rafael Perez, was connected to the murder. These officers were allegedly working with the Bloods gang, which was involved in a rivalry with the Crips, to carry out the murder in retaliation for Tupac's death. The LAPD has denied any involvement, and no concrete evidence has ever been found. Theory 4 again centers on Orlando Anderson, a member of the Southside Crips gang based in Compton. Orlando Anderson was involved in a physical altercation with Tupac Shakur at the MGM Grand just hours before Tupac's shooting in 1996. Some have speculated that the Crips were seeking revenge for Tupac's death, and that Anderson, or members of his gang, were responsible for killing Biggie as retaliation. Anderson was questioned by police in the aftermath of Biggie's murder, but was never arrested or charged. He continued to deny involvement. Theory 5 is an interesting one. In 2006, a retired LAPD detective named Greg Kading, who had investigated both Tupac's and Biggie's killings, proposed that the murder was carried out by a hitman named Keffe D, also known as Dwayne Keith Davis. Kading claimed that Keffe D was involved in the planning of Biggie's shooting, as well as Tupac's. According to him, the hitman was hired by Suge Knight's associates as part of a larger conspiracy. While Keffe D himself admitted to being in the car during Tupac's murder, his involvement in Biggie's death remains speculative. Theory 6. Some suggest that Biggie's murder could have been the result of a personal grudge or an act of street revenge, possibly related to his rise to fame, his ties to the streets, or issues within the music industry. Biggie's close circle had many associates with connections to gangs, and the murder could have been an act of retaliation for personal reasons unrelated to the larger East-West Coast rivalry. The East Coast-West Coast War, so volatile in the 90s, ended with two of its brightest stars gone. And though their rivalry burned brightly for a time, The legacy they left behind, through their music, their words, and the struggles they embodied, still echoes in the culture of hip-hop. In the end, Tupac and Biggie were more than just rivals. They were mirror images of the same hunger, the same struggle for identity, fame, and respect. And even though they couldn't see it in their time, their music speaks now as a testament to the fact that the real battle, in the end, was not with each other, but with the world that shaped them both. As the years pass, their names are still spoken with reverence, and their influence keeps growing. Their rivalry, tragic and unresolved, became the very thing that cemented their places in history, not as enemies but as icons, forever entwined in the story of hip-hop. The infamous killings of Tupac Shakur and Biggie continue to cast a long shadow over the music world, leaving behind a legacy of enigma and speculation. Whatever the underlying reasons, their murders remain in the murky depths of unsolved mysteries. Thank you for watching. If you have any theories, please leave them in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more true-life tales of the unexpected.